Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. RJ Horner back again. I am your beacon of leadership, along with my partner,
Curtis Leong.
and we have our fellow beacon,
Linda Tilson.
And along with us, we've invited a sociologist out to be involved in our topic today. Please introduce yourself and how you support our topic today.
Okay, hi, I'm Dr. Cummings. I am a sociologist and also I'm a mental health advocate, and I work in the area of domestic violence, particularly male victims of domestic violence, as well as things like child abuse and human trafficking. And the reason why I'm honored to be here and I accepted RJ's invitation is because a lot of stigmatization and ostracization still occur around mental health and mental health issues, particularly the way persons behave and their approaches to things, their coping mechanisms. So I'm here to participate in this wonderful discussion, and I know it's going to be fruitful and a good exchange of ideas. So thank you and good night, everyone.
Thank you. And thank you for laying that out for people, because again, our topic is dominating thoughts. We've all heard the term, what you think about, you bring about. So we're going to discuss through that. Again, we've been discussing what we call the self-confidence formula in the book, Think and Grow Rich, by Napoleon Hill. I said I'm going to start using this as a teaching manual. There are so many concepts in this book that are valuable, but this self-confidence formula will help you create your mission statement or your definite purpose and help define that and help keep you working towards that, even when things come up that may be distracting us from our actual purpose in life and what we decide or define that we want to do. So dominating thoughts, we're going to find out what it means to each of our guests tonight. And I will start it out as I usually like to do so that I can set up the topic and the theme. You see, I know once upon a time, I used to say I was an a-hole, peed off at the world. You know what I mean? I blamed the world for my problems. Now, I wouldn't have said that at the time. I was an angry man and didn't know why. I didn't know that my thoughts were affecting who I was and how I was behaving. So when it got to a point where I was about to burst, I was about to, lash out at somebody seriously, and who knows what that may have caused. And I know Dr. Camille could probably talk to that in at some point today, but I was angry and I had hatred. The very first thing when I decided it was time to change, I sought a counselor. Thank God I was willing and open to talk to somebody, because that changed who I was. But the very first thing I had to change was my attitude. I had to change how I was thinking, not just about myself, but other people, and how those other people were affecting me and my decision making. And then once I changed that, I was able to eventually, within a short period of time, calm myself down, learn new ways to think. Cognitive behavioral therapy was the method that helped change who I was and how I thought very quickly, actually. So that's a concept that we can bring about. I would like maybe Dr. Cummins to go next, maybe to speak on that. Your thoughts, of course, but maybe take over where I left off on why was I so angry and what was that doing to me and how was that affecting not just me but others who were interacting with me.
Okay, thank you, RJ. And listening to you and hearing what you're saying, first of all, dominant thoughts for me are the ones that shape your life the most. So I believe your life was being shaped by these negative thoughts that were in turn affecting your emotions and then having a consequential effect on your behavior towards people and situations. Now, as a sociologist, I look at things like environment and context, which are very important. What in the environment is shaping your dominant thoughts and that are causing, these sort of patterns in your brain to go in a negative direction. Now, I'm not going into psychiatry or anything in terms of physiology because we're going into the realm of medicine. But if we're talking from outside of the biomedical and looking more at the social aspects of health and mental health, it's because we're looking at things that affect our thinking patterns, right? And how, and it's good, RJ, that you identify your thinking patterns, that, you know, you have these intrusive thoughts. Now, dominant thoughts can be negative or positive, but most times when people talk, they talk about the negative thoughts. I constantly, you know, you would hear in the videos, I constantly have these reoccurring thoughts. I'm angry, I'm sad. But what are triggering these thoughts? And for me, if we go more into the social approach, we can look at, you know, mental illness etiology, for example, things like stress theory or labeling theory. What are some concepts and assumptions around how we feel and the thoughts that are constantly, you know, intruding our thinking patterns? And for example, if we look at stress theory, we're looking at events and strains that accumulate in people's lives and how those events and strains are actually influencing our thought patterns, right? And what sort of resources and abilities that we have at our disposal to even cope, okay? But then when you say you have dominant thoughts and you're angry, RJ, what about the aspect of labeling theory that says, okay, you know, RJ is going to be labeled a certain way because he's demonstrating visible symptoms of anger or other types of behavior that are affected by his dominant thoughts. So this is where I want to start off with in answering your question, RJ, and also sharing with you my perspective on it.
Thank you. Because again, I've done a lot of work to change who I am and my thinking patterns. And as such, it's affected or re-affected my environment. It's changed how people interact with me. But for people out there who may not understand that, people who may be, you know, being labeled, like you say, and not know why, because again, I didn't recognize at that time that way I was interacting with people were affecting the way they were responding to me. So for people out there, you know, these are the triggers. These are the things that are setting you off and giving back what you're putting out there. And there's where the dominating thoughts come up in a negative pattern. So next, I'd like to move on to Curtis, just because he is our positivity expert. So Curtis, what are your thoughts of maybe changing those thought vibrations from negative to a positive mindset?
Well, I always like to think of something that's funny in my life and try to think of it like that. So, you know, sometimes you get mad, pissed off at something. Sometimes you have to deal with that situation, but then you got to think of something that maybe make you laugh. Like, you know, maybe someone, so let's say you like farts, for instance. Some people will laugh at farts, right? It's just something from childhood, and it can make you have that little moment of change of your attitude, and then give you a perspective of thinking, okay, maybe this is not as bad as I thought it was originally. But to build up back what you said earlier about maybe your dominating thought would be that it does start off as a simple, oh, I hate this, and then it builds upon it. So it compounds over time, that this thought you had in the beginning is just festers into this big, huge thing in your mind. And just as that festers into a big problem, you can also reverse it with positivity. Just think about something good or something, or you tell yourself, I am going to have a great day today. And you say that continuously. Every time you have like, oh, this is my life, I hate my life. It's like, no, I love my life. I want to do better. So you just switch what you say to yourself. And it takes time. It doesn't happen overnight. It takes, remember, when you first off as a kid, most kids are pretty happy. Then as life goes on, things interrupt your life or things make you angry, but they don't have to make you angry. But as you get older, you have to deal with it, right? And then that's how you can start dealing with some issues. But everybody's different. Like you said, you had a counselor and that helped you. Some people can do it on their own because they have the willpower or maybe the drive, or maybe a big event happened in their life. Maybe someone passed away and they knew that, hey, I could be next. And I mean, I need to change, or something else. Like my best friend passed away because he's a drug addict. Oh my God, I got to figure out my life. I can't do drugs anymore. You know what I mean? Those are just some things that happens to people that, hey, maybe I need to change something. But that's my thought. I think it's all starts with self-talk and then just telling yourself you can do better every day. And then just keep on pushing yourself forward, because it becomes a habit. If you tell yourself something small, it compounds, right? So therefore it can become better. You just got to have the awareness of that you need to change first, and then you can make that change. That's it.
Absolutely. And like I said, cognitive behavioral therapy, for
Yep.
me, it worked because that is a simple three-step process that helps you, A, become aware of your thoughts. That's the first step. So writing down your thoughts that you're having or your action that you're taking, right? And how now, why was that a bad thought? Why was that a negative thought? And how do we reframe that? How do we turn that thought or that action into a more positive thought? So that the more you do this, you become aware of how you're acting or thinking, how that's affecting you and other people. And then how do you turn it into a positive? And eventually, it just became that I don't allow negative. Now, that's not to say I don't have negative thoughts anymore,
Yep.
but I'm able to instantly reframe them, right? There's racism and things are attitudes and people who cross you and things. These come up day to day. They do. I don't care who you are. Somebody will cross you in a negative pattern, but instantly change that thought into a positive, or what is the lesson I have to learn from this, so that we understand that I don't have to keep these negative thoughts inside and harboring ill will against any other person.
I agree, RJ. I'm sorry to cut you, but I want
No
to
worries.
sort of comment on Curtis'
Yeah.
statement, because what it reminded me of what Curtis was saying is that you have to connect event trigger, your thinking pattern, and your underlying beliefs. So, for example, you make a mistake. It's human to make a mistake, but of course, based on socialization and social construct, society and individuals and systems punish you for making a mistake. So the event trigger is you make a mistake, and that may be based on past trauma that causes you to punish your own self. But the thinking pattern is, how could I have made such a mistake? So your dominant thought is, oh my God, I did something horrible. I made such a mistake. Why did I do that? But if you change that to say, it is okay to make a mistake, I am human, I make mistakes, then it also changes your underlying belief. And if you constantly punish yourself for making mistakes, it's possible your underlying belief can be, you never do things right. So you're beating up on yourself. I never do things right. But if you change the thinking pattern from it's okay to make mistakes, then your underlying belief also change. And you say, I normally do things right, but it's okay to get it wrong and learn from it. And that's because of things that Curtis just said that I thought I might add that.
Absolutely. And so, Linda, you've been patiently waiting, listening to us. What are your thoughts around this subject? Let's hear from you.
Okay, I've been piecing together and listening to all the threads and figuring out how I want to come into the conversation. Definitely dominant thoughts. Awareness is important in yourself as you see them coming up, and recognizing and labeling those thoughts and being able to, like you said, feel through them. Because a lot of times we want to say, let's just make it into a positive. Well, I'm going to say, let's recognize I'm frustrated right now. And how can I move forward in a positive direction that feels good to me? And when you build that resiliency muscle, so when you get triggered by either yourself or another person or your environment, you can take that pause, take that breath, and then ask that question and pivot. And when you can do that, your dominant thoughts that were negative will be lesser and lesser. And when you set, for me, I like to set an intention for the day. If I wake up and say, well, today's going to be an awful Monday, it's just going to be slammed with things, I'm going to get nothing done, I'm going to feel drained and tired. That is my dominant thought that I start my day with. Imagine when the stressors come on, the unexpected things, you can get into a state where you get into that dominant way of thinking, and that's how your day will end up, and then you will go downhill. And RJ, I like how you talked about how your dominant thoughts were starting affecting the people around you. I can say in the workplace, I can see when people can regulate their emotions, and I can actually spot the dominant ones that come in that are less than positive, and the patterns will continue. So if I see somebody, because this is what I wanted to say, it's one thing to change yourself and to move forward, but what do you do if you see or observe someone that's in this negative dominant way of thinking? Because you want to help them out of it, right? And so I found by just kindly addressing the person and say, do you notice that when this thing happens, you're showing up in this way? And to get an acknowledgement, and to really have the conversation about what can change in their environment, what could change in the way that they approach things, so that you can get frustrated, you can be angry, you can think you're not good enough, but when you consistently tell yourselves these messages and other people are seeing it, it causes a lot of different things. It becomes a manifestation of what you've been thinking, and I've seen this time and time again, and so really, I want people to say something, speak up and say something when you see somebody doing this. A lot of times we don't want to, because we don't want to rock the boat or tell someone how to live their life or how to think. But I found that it's more kind actually to sit with a person, find out if you can have a conversation about it, and then see if they're willing to partner with you to make some small incremental changes that feel good to them. And when I do this with individuals, it's so rewarding, because that person can step away from those dominant thoughts, replace them with the more positive ones. And then you know what? They're able to achieve more things and feel good about themselves. And then you see less and less of the triggers, because we're all triggered. Let's face it, we're all going to be triggered by things. We could say that we're not, but we are. And that's what I found really helped. And so, Dr. Cummings, I mean, would you recommend, the approach that I had used, like in the workplace or in even a family setting, to do that?
You're on mute, Dr. Cummings.
My apologies. The key things, yes, Linda, definitely, because the key things that keeps coming out here would be awareness. And first of all, identifying what you feel and also addressing it, and not being afraid to say, okay, this is how I feel, this is how I think, and what am I going to do next?
Absolutely. Thank you for that. I'm glad you leaned on her next, because again, she's the expert. She has thoughts in these, she understands this a little bit better than us, who are, we have these ideas. We've learned about it. Two things I picked out was, it's a delicate topic to address. Sometimes you can set people off further when they're in that negative set of mind. So I always approach people with, how are you today? Right? And then maybe they might recognize they're not feeling so well, and they'll be willing to address that. But if not, then I go on to say, well, because I've noticed, right? And then usually that draws out a conversation, because sometimes they'll come back with, no, I'm actually doing okay. I'm feeling well. But you know what I mean? Now they'll start opening up about what's going on with them. Now you can have that conversation in a non-hurtful manner, non-threatening, and there's an engagement between the two. And usually that will change their spirits moving forward. And then there's back to that, what you think about, you bring about, right? We can all have those bad days. We can all stub our toe first thing in the morning. We could have stuck in traffic that's going to affect our attitudes. These are things we go through. How many times have we heard? In fact, I just saw it on social media the other day. I just want to go back to bed and start it all over again. But let's face it, that's not a reality, right? We still have to go through this traffic to get to work and go through our day, whatever that may bring. And if we allow our dominating negative thoughts to continue, it's just going to bring that manifestation you were talking about, Linda. We're just going to have that bad day that we've just agreed upon, right? So absolutely. So what are other people's thoughts? Again, we're trying to explore this topic, maybe in the area of turning it around for people. How do we get them to now address it and start thinking in a different manner?
Well, I think RJ and Linda, and what Linda said is, it really has me focused on several things here. And I think it's identifying our main thinking patterns and looking at things like identity. And you hit the nail on the head just now, RJ. How do you see yourself? But also your belief system, main ideas about your life that you agree with, or you disagree with, or you validate, or you invalidate. And then the values, what ideas are important to you, what things you like, and also what things you want to avoid in terms of your thinking patterns. And I like to also focus on things like attention. We all have to be aware. And when Linda spoke, Linda's also highlighting an issue that we all have to be aware of. What are our limitations, what are limited mental resources or emotional resources? And more importantly, and based on what Curtis was saying earlier, we also have to consider our behavioral habits, behaviors that we repeatedly perform, including our thinking habits, the repeating thoughts that go through our head most of the time is very crucial. And I would say also our emotional habits, what are our emotional states? What are the dominant emotional states that we experience most days? Is it anger? Is it, happiness, sadness? So that's just, some of the things that I want to put out there in response to your answer.
Absolutely. Thank you. And I always say, you know what, I relate it to a sinking ship. You know what I mean? We often, people in that state of mind, if you don't recognize the symptoms, you're not going to change them. But also usually, and Curtis touched on this earlier, is that we don't look for those positive things. We don't change things until they get into a situation that we're about to lose it all. Look, I was about to lose my house, my wife. You know what I mean? I could have been the guy on the street bum and changed because I was in that state. I knew I had to do something different, right? Whether it's drugs that we're taking or, we're in a bad social environment, or, financial difficulties, these things are all strains that only just get worse and worse and worse. And until we experience that hardship, till some of us hit bottom, we don't adjust our thinking patterns. We just allow it to continue and get worse. So again, it's unless we recognize it, unless we are aware of who we are and who we are allowing ourselves to become, we don't take those steps to change our thought pattern to positivity.
Yeah.
So being thought leaders, that's who we're talking to mostly. People who are trying to change the world. People who are trying to show this world a better place. How can we get them to let their dominating thoughts serve them? How can they use these patterns to put them in a better place, not just for themselves, but to those they want to help and assist to build that better life or to grow and learn?
Sure. Do you want to read the self-confidence formula point number 2?
Sure.
Any
Actually,
thoughts?
that's a good idea. Yeah. So, but this is what led our conversation today. The second step in the self-confidence formula is I realize the dominating thoughts of my mind will eventually reproduce themselves in outward physical action and gradually transform themselves into reality. Therefore, I will concentrate my thoughts for 30 minutes daily upon the task of thinking of the person I intend to become, thereby creating in my mind a clear mental picture of that person. I love that. It kind of defines everything we've been talking about, right? Especially directed to thought leaders. How do we set that up? How do we put ourselves in that position? And is it instant? Obviously, I'd like your thoughts on that because it says so in the formula. It says the gradual, right? Eventual reproduce themselves in outward physical action. So let's have a discussion on that. What are your thoughts?
I think if you're thinking of something positive for 30 minutes a day, you're definitely going to become a better person. No matter if you like it or not, you're going to make it happen.
Well, if you're
Because
thinking
you're
about
concentrating
something
it.
positive, I think you'll change your attitude, you'll change your
Yep.
mindset.
Absolutely.
But the reason we're writing out this physical plan, let's call it, right? The what was it we were talking about last week? Why won't it come to my mind? The
Taking
definite
action.
purpose, the definite
Purpose.
chief
Yeah,
aim.
Gary.
When we're writing it out, that's the reason we're writing it out and reading it again. So we're meditating on this. We're imagining the person we are to be, right? So I think,
Definitely.
yeah. And then, so they talk about concentrate my thoughts for 30 minutes daily. What does that do? And what is that state of mind for us?
Well, I think RJ, it has to do with the law of concentration. You become what you think about. So in other words, anything that you dwell upon can become your reality. So if you think about something long enough, hard enough, it eventually becomes part of your mental processes. So if you think you are a good leader long enough, it's going to start becoming part of your mental process that you are a good leader, and you're going to start to demonstrate attitude and behavior that is influenced by that. So if you constantly think thoughts of boldness and courage and self-assertion, then you become progressively courageous and more self-assertive. So yes, definitely the law of concentration is very important here.
Absolutely. Linda, I know you're not with us too much longer. You gave us a deadline today, so I want to get your thoughts in as much as possible.
Yes, I'm thinking that when you're practicing those 30 minutes of intention on your definite purpose and chief aim, what happens is when you're doing that, then you organically, over time, start taking those actions that will lead you towards that. So you talked a lot about, you didn't like the word becoming something. And so we talked about I am. Well, I decided to test that. And so instead of thinking I am becoming or I'm learning this one thing, I just said, I am this. And then I started doing some out of the box actions. The out of the box actions led to success in an area where I told myself that I sucked. because I had this idea that I was not good in an area because I wasn't experiencing it in a way that somebody else had. And so I thought, well, why is this? And I thought, well, if I tell myself I'm terrible, I suck at this thing, well, then that's what I'm going to do. I thought, well, what if I just say I am good at this? I know what I need to do. I'm going to go do it. I did it. And sure enough, I achieved what I wanted to do. So therefore, I don't suck at the thing that I thought that I didn't have any ability to really do. And the funny thing is, I've been successful in this one area for a very long time, but the definition was based on somebody else's values. But when I started basing it on my values and my process for achieving what I wanted to do, actualizing those thoughts, it became second nature. And so when they say it takes a while, sure it does, because I could say, I am this, I'm going to do it. And it took months to do something. And realizing the steps that I was taking was working. And the realization came on, not from me doing that, because I can look outside myself now. Somebody said, you just took out of the box actions and you just achieved this thing. And it's because of those things that you're good at this. And I thought, oh, I could have saved myself a lot of time and energy by being in that more positive, I can do this and I am this person, as opposed to I'm not this person, I can't do this.
Yeah, absolutely. Because self-doubt is one of those dominating thoughts that can hold us back. And I've been there for the long time. We talked about who I want to be, right? Who I've always been trying to emulate up until now. Because now it's not a question of, should I be that person, right? Who am I to be that person? Or I'm working to step into this. You see how hard I work to try and remove that word.
Mhm.
But as long as you have this desire, this dream, you're trying to reach for that, you may never truly reach it. But if you just be it, just do it, just start thinking, I am, you will eventually step into that being. You will eventually just be that person. And then, okay, I'll let my thoughts sink in there. If somebody else has something to add there on that topic.
Well, I agree with Linda, definitely. Oh, Curtis, sorry, I cut
Oh, no,
you.
let's go ahead. I was agreeing with RJ. Go ahead.
Yes, I agree with Linda, because it's all about doing things based on your values many times. And I think it goes back to socialization, where children are socialized to be like other people, or they're constantly compared to other people, and they're constantly doing things and making decisions based on adult value systems. I'm not saying they do not need guidance, but we have to teach children how to be independent thinkers. And like Linda said, you get there and you do it, but you basically you do it on your time and using your own value system. And based on what RJ just said, by the time you reach an adult, you have to sometimes unlearn toxic and negative behaviors and thinking patterns that you grew accustomed to. So as RJ said, I'm now thinking I can,
Mm-hmm. And those words, I can't, I don't. And the universe, that's another thing I was just about to say, is the universe doesn't recognize when You say, I don't want this, or I don't want that. But start to think in terms of I am this, or I can do this. I'm able to, start thinking in those positive terms. Remove the negative terms because the universe doesn't recognize them. It just brings more of what you have, more of what you've been thinking. So start thinking in a positive way and reinforcing those positive words, those positive actions. And eventually those positive actions are just going to be part of your existence, right? And there's no more question of, can I do this? It's just what you do.
Become that person eventually.
You do what?
You'll become that person at some point.
Sorry, I didn't hear that word.
You will. I am that person. I'm positive.
Look, I recognize it. You know how hard, see, but it's part of my consciousness, right? I do not, to the best of my efforts, use that word anymore because I'm not trying to something,
Yep.
right? I'm just being that. I'm just doing that. I am that. I am, right? Isn't that the expression that what we started off with this? You recognize that I am able. I'm a thought leader. I am RJ. I am, positive. I am happy. You just are. You're not trying to attempt to be something.
And the one thing that when everyone's doing the I am, all of a sudden, what was once hard actually becomes effortless. And when it becomes effortless, the universe responds because you're sending off this energy I am, you're believing, you're doing. And that's what part of the change that transformation that happens is that people will actually treat you differently based on how you show up. And so why wouldn't you want to show up in this other space of being?
Definitely.
Yep. And then so the last thing I just want to point out, look, nothing happens at the snap of a finger, right? It all transformation anyways does not happen at the snap of a finger. It does happen over time. So don't worry and don't stress yourself about the fact that you haven't changed yet. You haven't stepped into this other role. It gradually happens with practice, with effort, and with time. So, for people out there, do not aggravate and stress yourself undue, knowing that I haven't been able to do this as fast as I may want to. So I think we've got some silence going on. So I think we've talked through this concept. So at this point, I'd like to give everybody the opportunity to connect back. We've had some valuable information. People have learned some things from us. Dr. Cummings, you've certainly added your input today. How can people get back to you and learn more about what you do?
Okay, well, you can reach me via my email. It's CamilleTCummings@gmail.com. As well as they can reach out to you because I'm also in your group, a Beacon of Leadership group, and my Facebook profile, Camille TC. You can look me up there as well. So, and I'm always open to conversation and collaboration.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. And thank you for that plug, because again, I like to say that, look, by having access to us, by being a follower, by being a member, you don't just have access to myself, Curtis, and now Linda, who may be joining us as a team member, but you have access to our entire community, right? So there's the value in becoming a beacon of leadership. So thank you for that. Linda, I'll give you the opportunity next. How can people reach out to you and learn more about and become involved with you?
Yes, I am active on LinkedIn, and I can be reached at youlearnfromlinda@gmail.com. Those are two ways. And of course, as Dr. Cummings has said, in this group here, the Leaders Lighthouse, the Thought Leadership, the Beacon of Leadership, you can find me here.
Absolutely. And then, so Curtis, who are we? What do we do? And how can people find out more about us?
Well, we're Beacon of Leadership. You can reach us at www.beaconofleadership.com. I put in the comments on YouTube. And if you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell so you know
Ring
when we
my
go
bell.
live.
I love hearing that.
Yeah.
Go ahead. No, continue.
Oh, yeah. And then we also have a Buzzsprout podcast. And this week we got 50 downloads. It's pretty surprising.
We have
Awesome.
reached 50 downloads.
Yep,
Yeah. So
right.
that's pretty exciting. It shows that there's value out there and people are liking what we do. I will say we are behind on our podcast. I admitted that to you, Curtis.
Yep.
We've only got, 7 episodes, I think, up on our podcast that people can download. But from those 7 podcasts, we've reached 50 downloads. I think that's pretty impressive. It means our voice is carrying out there.
Yes.
So it means I've got to get more of our episodes up for people to download and
Absolutely.
absorb that content. But again, you can find us and more about what we do at beaconofleadership.com. Again, I'm RJ Horner. I'm a beacon of leadership. Curtis,
I'm Curtis Leong, beacon of positivity.
and along with Linda.
Yes, Linda, and I am a beacon of empowerment.
Nice. And Dr. Cummins, thank you for joining us, and just say goodnight to people out there.
Good night. Thanks for having me. It was a wonderful discussion. Nice meeting you, Curtis, and
too, Dr.
Linda
Crow.
again. And we'll see each other at another podcast.
Yes, yes. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. And we'll continue the valuable work and sharing the wisdom as we like to do here in our podcast. So thank you, everybody, for joining us. Thank you to the people out there who are going to enjoy us. And until next time, better days ahead.
Awesome.
Okay, bye.
All right.
Bye.